Hello and welcome back to this course on fundamentals of data science. And today we are going to embark on new topics, that's on exploratory data analysis. So that is going to be the main contents of today's discussion. We call it as EDA. And we will discuss about some tools and techniques that's in for EDA. And finally we will see data visualization models which supports this EDA. And the main objective here again, we are going to deal with what is this EDA, exploratory data analysis, and we are going to see why it is essential and what are the various techniques that are in this EDA. Finally, we are going to look at certain graph-based models to actually do this simple exploratory data analysis. Let's start by defining what is EDA. EDA, generally speaking, it's an exploratory data analysis, is an approach to analyze the data, to summarize its characteristics, often with visual methods. That's the basis for EDA. And at times people try to define this as a philosophical model for data analysis that employs various techniques, mostly graphical techniques, because we can visualize the graphs. So what does it do? By this approach, you can maximize the insight into your data set. You can uncover the underlying structure of the data. You can extract the important variables that are part of the data. You can detect outliers and anomalies. You can test underlying assumptions. There are a lot of other advantages of this EDA. This we are actually doing even before performing the actual data preparation or any other processing. It's one of the first steps that we used to do. And originally it was proposed by John Wilder Tuckey. He is the one initially defined this form of data analysis. So he said it's a procedure for analyzing data, techniques for interpreting the results for such procedures, ways for planning the gathering of data to make its analysis easier, more precise and more accurate, and all machineries and results of mathematical statistics which applies to analyzing data. Yes, that's why we need such analysis, because it can tell us the data can go beyond formal modeling or hypothesis testing. This allows the statistician to explore the data and possibly formulate hypotheses that could lead to new data collections and experiments. Let's discuss more on this. As the statistician John Tuckey suggested, we can go ahead with this EDA. The main objective of this EDA is to suggest hypotheses about the cause or causes of observed phenomena, assess assumptions on which statistical inference will be based, and support the selection of appropriate statistical tools and techniques. And some of the things that we are also going to consider today. And it also provides the basis for further data collection through survey or experiments. Here is the overall flow diagram of the data science process. Can you see where this exploratory data analysis fits in this data science process? Yes, it's right there, and you can see after this data analysis process or after this EDA process, you actually perform the actual data processing, and also actual modeling and algorithm is also done after this. So once you have this raw data, we can in fact perform a simple analysis with EDA even before you are processing the entire data. So that's why this EDA is an important part of data science process. With this in mind, let's move ahead, because even when you go on to do various projects based on data science, you should always perform this EDA initially to get some understanding of what the data is, even before performing various other operations. There are various visual techniques for this kind of EDA that are available. From one perspective, we can see that the EDA has the basic graph models, including box plot, histogram, run chart, scattered plot, targeted projection pursuit, or stem and leaf plot. There are various different plots, and these plots are nothing but they are different forms of graphs. With the given data, you just take the data set and put these data sets visually and then try to analyze what you see visually. Yes, it's a visual techniques for EDA. And by means of these visual techniques, as we have seen earlier, sometimes you can observe certain outliers. You can detect certain values which are odd, or at times you can also see the trend that is in the data set even before performing other operations. And other parts of this EDA tool includes dimensionality reduction. It can be done by means of multidimensional scaling or principal component analysis, PCA, using multilinear PCA or nonlinear dimensionality reduction. That's another approach. And finally, we have this quantitative techniques like median polish or ordination. These are different ways in which we can perform the EDA. So today we are going to look at a few methods by which you can perform this EDA. Initially, now the question is how to perform this EDA. Yes, basically we can perform this EDA by using the available tools that you have in hand. Maybe you can use statistical tools like R programming, Python programming, any business intelligence tools like Power BI or Tabular tools can be used, because these Power BI or Tabular, they can actually provide interactive dashboards for understanding data. So BI means business intelligence. They can be very useful tool because it's very easy for you to just drag and drop your data set, and then right away you can visualize the trend of that data. If you're using R and Python, you may go for certain packages and libraries in it like matplotlib, Seaborn, Plotly. There are a lot of different libraries that are available. But on the other hand, if you are going for the BI tools, that is business intelligence tools, you can directly see the features, visualize it more easily. In R and Python, maybe you have to program a little bit, even though you are using these packages. But in the BI tools, you don't really have to program. You just have to understand how to use those tools. And simply, even without programming, you can visualize this EDA. And there are a few things that we have to keep in mind as we perform this EDA. So you have to ask the right question. Some of the important questions are, is it important that we ask right questions about what we want from the data analysis? Yeah, for example, questions like which features are important, which features are correlated to each other. This is in fact an important question before we dive in. It is very useful if you could have basic knowledge about a domain problem. Suppose you are working with some data related to biomedical field, and that too that biomedical is related to, say, lung or liver informations. Then if you have some domain knowledge about that, it will be very helpful for you to perform this simple EDA, explanatory data analysis. So without knowing about the domain of a problem, it is useless or meaningless to find an answer to some questions. Just like, for example, if problem belongs to medical history of a patient, if that is given to us, do we understand some important terms used in determining patient's health condition? If that is a numeric data, do you understand what is what? Yes, it's important for us to know the domain problem. Never forget your objective. So we should never forget our objective, whether it is classification or regression problem. We sometimes end up performing unnecessary tasks in EDA, mainly when there are more number of features in a data set. Yes, your EDA can really help you to see what is happening. So you should focus on your objective. If we can focus on the objective, we will also clearly see if there are unwanted features in the data, which we can ignore or we can remove it later on. Here are some methods and plots that are used for data analysis purpose: univariant, bivariant, multivariant, and dimensionality reduction. Univariant visualization provides summary statistics for each field in raw data set, whereas a bivariant visualization is performed to find relationship between each variables in the data sets and the target variables of interest. And as the word multivariant suggests, there is we have to understand interaction between different fields of data sets which may have different variables. And finally, as the word dimensionality reduction suggests, we are aiming at reducing the dimensions. Yes, it helps us to understand the field in the data that accounts for most variance between observation and allows for pre-processing of reduced volume of data. So we are talking about reducing the volume of data. Sometimes data will have more dimensions, and when dimension is reduced, it's quite useful to visualize things. We can reduce a 3D to a 2D model to visualize things. At times, it is also easy to visualize certain dimensions which are appealing to the eyes. Some of the common plots used for explanatory data analysis are histograms, scatter plot, pair plots, box plot, and we have already seen some more in the past. Few slides earlier we saw some more plots as well. Let's consider a few plots in detail. Let's start with the histogram. So what is this histogram? Histograms displays the shape and spread of continuous sample data. A histogram is a graphical display of data using bars of different heights. So as you can see here, here is a typical example of a histogram. So as you can see, there are different bars and there is a range here, range of values, and we can divide the entire range of values into series of intervals like 0, 2, 4, 6. There are series of intervals is given to this bars, and the bins are usually defined with consecutive non-overlapping. It is not overlapping. All the bins are individuals. They are not overlapping. It's distinct with the distinct intervals, and they are adjacent to one another, next to one another. To understand further, let's see this example here. So we are given with the data of a histogram using 500 items here. So this is the count, 500 is given to us, count is 500. With that we are giving this plot here. So you can see for minus 3.5 to minus 2.51, we have values of 9 counts. So this goes here, and if you look at the second one, it goes here, 32. The third one is here, 109. The fourth one is the peak, which is 180. So that is how this histogram separates without overlapping the bins or the bars that you have here. And it also gives us clear spread of continuous sample data. So data are given to us, and these data are accordingly distributed. So that's the advantage of using a histogram. Now let's consider this scattered plot. Scattered plot is one of the popular means of spread, showing the spread of data. And this scattered plot can be also used for many applications, like even for understanding regressions. We are going to use the scattered plot. Basically, it's displaying between two coordinates. So in other words, we can say it as like Cartesian coordinates with typical two variables for a set of data. So if you consider here, also an example is given between two variables, and if the points are coded or color, you can also have different colors for the scattered plots. One additional variables can be displayed. You can actually use that. And data are displayed as collection of points, each having the values of one variable determining the position on horizontal axis and one variable on the vertical axis. So here is an example given to us. This example is of the scattered plot, and this is the waiting time between the eruption and the duration of the eruption. So the eruption duration is given on the x-axis, and the waiting time between the eruption is given on the y-axis. So this is of the Faithful Geyser in the Yellowstone National Park in USA. So this chart suggests there are generally two types of eruptions. One is short wait, short duration, and the long wait, long duration. So you can see here, this may be considered as the short wait, short duration, and here is another one, long wait, long duration. So you can clearly see there is a certain pattern has been developed in this scattered plot. Just by the plots you can actually see it. It's very useful to understand the patterns in the data set. box plot. It's another interesting plot. In descriptive statistics, the box plot is a method of graphically depicting groups of numerical data through their quartiles. The box plot may also have lines extended from the box or boxes, indicating the variability outside the upper lower quartiles. So here we can see in this example of a box plot is given to us, and you can see the temperatures are given in Fahrenheit, and with the data that we have in hand, it is the data like 50, 50, 55. These are the data given to us, and all these data we are going to represent using the box plot. And from here you can also observe that the median value that you have here for the data are also given to us. In fact, the mean values and the median values we are going to check. So this part is almost 70, and you can see you can also see what is its minimum value and what is its maximum value. So the minimum value is also somewhere hovering around this value, and the maximum value is also hovering around this value. So you are going to consider the maximum, minimum, the median value, and then you have going to have the first quartiles, then second quartile, and third quartile, so on. So you can see how well the data are concentrated in one region or other, and you can also notice if there is a data, if there is an outlier outside the range or outside too far from the actual range of data, it can easily identify using box plot. That's one of the advantage of having a box plot. Here is a plot called heat map. As you can see, the heat map, you can actually visualize clearly what is happening, certain kind of phenomena which has been visualized by means of certain colors, and the variation of these colors maybe by hue or intensity, giving this obvious visual cues to the readers about how the phenomena is clustered or varies over space. So the intensity of the data are represented by dark and light colors. So this example of a DNA microarray data reflecting the gene expression values in several conditions are given in this particular diagram. So likewise, you may also might have noticed the actual heat wave map of geographical locations, like in the weather forecast you might have seen the heat wave, which shows you the red color representing the actual heats, and even you would have also seen the clouds and other parts which represents maybe a cloudy day or rainy day as well. So likewise, the same thing can be applied in different mode. For instance, if you are having a geographical locations of different towns, and if you want to show the population of these regions, you can show by these heat waves. Actually, certain regions with dark and more intense color represents there are highly concentrated population is there, whereas some regions it's very light, which represents less population. Run plot or run chart. A run chart also, as you can see here, known as a run sequence plot. So it's basically a graph that displays observed data in a time sequence. That's why we call it as a run. The data displayed represents some aspects of output or performance as shown in this example. If you look at this example, it's a simple run chart showing data collected over time, and if you see it's collected from this June 8th to June 27th of 1973, and the whole data is running through this factor. And you can also observe that there is this median value that is also being given to us. So it's all running through this median value, ups and downs along this median values is also shown. So that's what we have seen in this lecture. We talked about explanatory data analysis. We know why it is important to do this EDA. Even before we embarking into the actual data process, we can make certain decisions. We can identify the data set, how it looks like. Is there an outlier in the data set, or does the data set itself has some trend? Well, we also talked about that if you want to know these features, whether the outliers are important or not, you should have a domain knowledge of that particular problem that you're dealing with. And we talked about various different EDA techniques, various graph models. There are a lot of models, and in fact we saw only few of them in this lecture. And next class or next lecture, we are going to look at some information about the missing values or missing data. We are going to see how we can handle these missing data, and finally we are going to work out some information about outliers. So that's the topic for next session. I'm looking forward to see you in the next session. Until then, goodbye.